Looking out a dirty old window.
Clueless is a 1995 film directed and written by the female director Amy Heckerling. It follows the main character of Cher Horowitz, a young girl with an interest for fashion and all things feminine. We follow her as she navigates love, friendships, and high school. It is a classic chick flick. When it comes to chick flicks, they have a very clear target audience of women. They often pass the Bechdel test, feature strong female leads, and have a handsome male love interest. However, this does not mean they are exempt from featuring the male gaze. In feminist theory, the male gaze is the act of depicting women and the world from a masculine perspective that presents and represents women as sexual objects for the pleasure of men. But, if a film is made for women, by women, how is a male perspective still present? In this society, the patriarchy is too strong of a force to be overcome. In their everyday lives, women will be sexualized wherever they go. This is displayed prominently in Clueless. We see sexualizing behaviors displayed in this film through representation and the film language used as well. Not only can these female characters be sexualized by the audience, but they are also sexualized by their fellow characters within the narrative. Cher is desirable and sought after by men, having many love propositions throughout the film. There is still a male gaze towards Cher, even if there are no male viewers. In that respect, the male gaze is always inevitable. To explore this theory, I will split this video into 3 segments: how viewers interpret the film, how characters within the film view Cher, and the genre of melodrama. When it comes to media, people are allowed to interpret things however they would like. In some cases, the audience will successfully decode the message or meaning and understand what a specific film is trying to convey. Like, for Clueless, it's for women to enjoy and relate to. In other instances, the audience will reject or simply not understand the message that is trying to be sent. Films may have specific target audiences and appeal to one demographic who will receive the preferred message, but there will still always be viewers who have an oppositional view. In the case of Clueless, it has one clear aim: to be a pleasurable viewing experience for women. It stars women, is written and directed by one, and is considered to be part of the genre of chick flick. It is encoded to be a fun, relatable story for female viewers. If this is the case, it seems almost impossible for a male gaze to be present. However, even if the creator is actively seeking to avoid it, it is always inevitable. Attractive people and characters will be able to be found attractive by whoever wants to see them as such, especially when it comes to male audiences. Despite its female-oriented nature, Clueless features some scenes that can clearly appeal to men. When Cher walks down the stairs to meet Christian, there is a clear intention to make her look beautiful. The camera is at a low angle, causing her to dominate the scene, paired with a white dress and white banisters to make her look heavenly. Alongside this is swirling romantic music to highlight her beauty in this scene. This presents Cher as not only desirable, but also shows her in a more mature light. We cut to Josh to see him gazing lovingly, a white gleam in his eyes. This scene clearly has the intention to show Josh is gaining romantic feelings for Cher, but not all viewers will interpret it this way. The preferred reading is clearly to establish a connection between 2 characters and highlight Cher's desirability, but the receiver might not be up to the business of getting the message he or she ought to get. A male viewer of the scene may find Alicia Silverstone attractive, follow this through to her character as Cher, and view the scene as her being an attractive object for them to look at. As Cher walks down the stairs, it's as if the camera is the viewer's eyes themselves. She fills the frame. The camera enacts the male gaze, panning up and down the woman's body. The camera creates the object qua object. There is a clear reason to this scene, and yet it can be overshadowed by male audiences and how they perceive the characters. Even the narrative behind this scene, Josh beginning to find Cher attractive, helps enact the male gaze. The men on screen are agents of the look with whom spectators identify to enjoy vicarious control and possession of the woman. Male audiences can then identify themselves with Josh and feel as though they are justified in subjecting Cher to the male gaze. The male gaze is inevitable as the audience is not a passive recipient of meaning. They will always be able to decode the message of the film however they would like. Another instance that shows the inevitability of the male gaze is how Cher represents herself within the universe she is in. The chick flick heroine is a girly girl cultivating childlike looks and behaviour, and to make things even worse, her perpetual girlhood is celebrated rather than problematised. Cher is popular, pretty, and fits all the typical female stereotypes, while being portrayed as a person for viewers to identify with. Cher, however, is disinterested in boys.
Okay, I don't want to be a traitor to my generation and all, but I don't get how guys dress today. I mean, come on, it looks like they just fell out of bed.
Due to this being established, the audience can connote that Cher isn't dressing up for others, only herself. This outlook can be empowering for women and let them know that they can dress up and feel attractive without it being for male attention. This perspective changes, however, when she meets the character of Christian. Instantly, Cher swings into a flurry of attempts and schemes to get his attention, some about her looks and some about creating jealousy. She says,
Sometimes you have to show a little skin. This reminds guys of being naked, and then they think of sex.
This tells the audience a few things about Cher. For one, she is smart and calculated, but only when it comes to getting what she wants. She will not work for good grades, but will manipulate her teachers. She has the same response for men. Instead of flirting or asking him on a date, she tries to trick him into being interested in her and thinking about her constantly. Secondly, she does many things for male attention. Male characters often treat female characters as sexual objects, whereas female characters more often engage in self-sexualizing behaviors and are more often judged for whether or not they qualify as attractive compared to their male counterparts. We see Cher convey this as she practically makes herself an object for Christian to ogle at. She is making herself a victim of the male gaze within the film. Cher's voiceover is used to reveal the glaring gap between the heroine's perceptions of events and the events themselves. She could perceive what she is doing as female empowerment or view it as harmless that she's dressing up for male attention. She has no idea that instead of this putting her in control, it actually takes power away from her. She is made into an object and desired only for her looks. Just because she is dressing up for one male character doesn't mean other students aren't staring at her too, just like with the male audiences. The male gaze will always be inevitable if the character presents herself as someone who cares about style and looks. It can be argued by the viewers of her that this is for their attention. The genre of melodrama as a whole brings forth issues with representation and how women are viewed. Clueless fits into this genre well. Melodramas have narratives focused on romantic desire, emphasis on emotion, and an excessive style. We see this with Cher's gaudy outfits, attempts to set people up, and the climax of the film being her realization of love for Josh. Clueless bridges into the world of camp, a relish for the exaggeration of sexual characteristics and personality mannerisms. By doing so, it highlights the sexuality of the characters, especially Cher, and causes the audience to focus on such characteristics. Melodramas are made for women by men, and thus function as part of the patriarchal system. Clueless, however, is directed by a woman. This seems as though it would rid the film of the patriarchal aspect, but it does not. The women's film became a privileged genre for feminist film critics primarily because of its ostensible address to a female audience. This address, unbeknownst to many, will actually always be tainted with a male viewpoint. Melodramas are the parent genre to chick flicks in some way, the original women's film, though they were not created with the women's best intention in mind. All the features mentioned earlier were to play on what men saw women as and what they liked. Emotional beings focused purely on romance and men. Therefore, Clueless will always feature patriarchal systems leading to the male gaze. Clueless, as a whole, almost has no plot. Instead, it is a catalogue of events happening within Cher's life, setting up her teachers, transforming Ty, and realising she loves Josh. All three of these focus on relationships, the nearer end of the film focusing on her own love life. This is all Cher is reduced to. Instead of a woman with layered thoughts, opinions, and desires, she just focuses on love. This shows that the genre of melodrama will always have a heavy patriarchal umbrella over it. The women are shown to be overly emotional and romance-driven, giving men the opportunity to view them as objects for them to obtain and look after. All the aspects of a melodrama lead to the male gaze being possible. The male gaze as a whole will always be inevitable. Even in a somewhat innocent film about a young girl finding love, it is present and found in multiple occasions throughout the film. Even a positive feminist film observation like the Bechdel test can cause the male gaze. The more women present, the more likely they are to be sexualized. Women are defined only in sexual relation to men, and never as people defining themselves by their own actions, and Clueless is not excluded from this. Cher starts off as independent, then wanting to please men and eventually end up in a relationship. Whether intended or not, Heckerling created a female character without layers and complexity available for men to sexualize. She represents exactly what the female gender is expected to represent, cares about fashion, invested in other relationships, and wants male attention. By being this stereotype, it continues the cycle of the male gaze. Women should be allowed to enjoy typically female things without judgment or sexualization, but this will never be the case. Falling into this stereotype just makes women more subjective to the male gaze. The male gaze will always be inevitable if women continue to be feminine and men continue to exist.